everyone. My name is Maite, and today we are having a new interview with one of our School of AI participants, Sophine Clachar. She took part in the last batch 6, I believe, that just finished up right before Christmas. So we want to hear a little bit more about her and her experience. Hello, Sophine. How are you?
Hi, Maite. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Happy to be here with you. All
Yes,
right.
likewise.
So I see that you have a Ph.D. in computer science. Did I say that right? And have like over 12 years of experience working for industry and in academics. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So my path took many turns, I would say. I started off with just an acute interest in technology, and then over time, I started to find my niche. So more recently, I started to get into scientific computing and machine learning, but along the way, I've picked up different skills as I've worked at different organizations and did different types of research. So I would say my background is a bit of a mix of software engineering, and then after a certain point, I developed an interest in machine learning and AI. And around 2011, that's when I started to explore machine learning, and initially out of curiosity. And I got the chance to work on a really great project with analyzing flight data from the smaller aircraft. And that's what really, took off everything for me in terms of my interest in machine learning. And from there, I've been on a quest to learn as much as I can and sharpen my skills as much as I can, because this field changes so often. And that is how I started to research different opportunities to learn more and encountered PyCampus.
Yeah.
So,
How did you hear about PySchool?
on Kaggle. So Kaggle is a data science community, and I joined it in around 2011. And the main interest that I had at the time was just how to just finding different data sets to analyze. And I was very interested in machine learning, as I mentioned, and data science as a field. And the best way to learn more is just to find data and analyze it. So that's how I first encountered Kaggle. So every now and then I always go on and see what new data sets they have that are interesting. And then I also take a peek at their job board. And that's when I saw the advertisement from PyCampus, and I was thrilled. So I was like, oh, great, let me apply. So, so I applied and I was accepted, and I was excited.
Great,
So, yeah.
great. Not many people get, we get a lot of applications, but not a lot of people get accepted. So it's quite a feat to make it.
Yeah, I was thrilled.
So can you, in your own words, because we describe this through our website and our AI experts always explain how the School of AI works. Can you explain it in your own words, how this is set up and the challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting, really. So the way how it's set up, really, it's designed to take you on a journey. I would say it's a short 8-week journey, but it's very meaningful. So during your interview, you'll be interviewed by one of the mentors or one of the School of AI staff, and they will learn more about you and you learn more about the program. And during that process, they try to get an idea as to your skills and your background and what potential project they can pair you with. And what happens is that when you're selected, you'll be paired on a certain program based on either your interest or maybe a mixture of both your interest and your background. And from there, the project is intentionally scoped, but it's not scoped in such a way that there's no room for your input. So they pair you with a project, and also it's a real life project for a company. Well, there are many companies. So the company that I worked on was an Italian-based company, and you got an understanding of their business use case and what they're hoping to achieve. And the project is it's scoped so that you can have an idea as to how to start, but there's still room for you to add your input and refine it and have that interaction with the stakeholders so that you can understand really what they want and add your own creativity to the final solution. So it's designed to take you on a journey, as I mentioned, but the path that you take can really change based on your input, but you're still guided throughout the different steps, and also it's designed in a way to ensure that you learn each week. You learn something new and something that's applicable. So you'll not leave the project and have and work with something fictitious. You're working with something meaningful that has business value.
Yeah, I think that's the most valuable thing about the program, that you actually work on real projects and
Yes.
You get to develop them and think of implementation. Without revealing too much, can you tell us a little bit more about the project you worked on or you were assigned to?
Sure. So the project that I worked on was for a company called Net Group, and they're an Italian-based company, and they've been around for many years. So this company, they've always been on the cutting edge of developing new novel technologies, and more recently, they've been doing some work with IoT and 5G. And I say more recently, but it's really a few years. But this is just the new wave of technology. So that's the reason for my terminology. So they wanted to develop a new set of tools or technologies, I would say, without giving too much away. And in order to do that, they need to hire individuals with specialized skills and also relevant technical expertise and also background. So the project that I worked on was to develop a recommendation engine that would identify the candidates with these specialized skills and would also identify prominent research, and these prominent research would also point you to who are the candidates or who are actually performing active research in this area. So the project that I worked on was just to identify the specialized skills and also the prominent research and recommend to Net Group who are potential candidates for this area that they are working on.
That is very interesting, that we can
Thank you.
narrow, the profiles that are needed and the skills necessary to develop these internal projects. So,
and it's quite challenging because they want to do an international search. And it's difficult because when you're starting a new project, you have more questions than answers. And one question they had was, where do they find these candidates? So we built an AI-powered search engine or recommendation engine, I would say, that can, analyze different documents on the web and find out who are the potential candidates and
globally.
Yes, globally. And which region is doing the prominent research. And also, we answered a big question for them. Can they identify good quality candidates locally? And that showed up in the research that Italy was in the top 10, according to the data that they could find their candidates locally as well. So that was good news for them.
Yes. Very interesting. It's also, it's good for them because they can find their talent locally, but it's also good to know how this talent is spread internationally also. So that, that relation that Italy comes up very well positioned in this specific set of skills is very interesting knowledge to obtain.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So more into the inner workings of this talent. You were assigned to a team of 2. I'm not sure.
We had a team of 3. So in this batch, it was a bit of a mix. So there were some groups with teams of 2, and there were some with teams of 3. My team had 3 individuals in there.
And are you matched according to your individual skills to make, a better team, or do you all come from the same background? How is that set up?
No, we all came from very different backgrounds. So,
that's good.
So my background is in scientific computing. One of my team members, his background was in engineering, and another one, his background was in computer vision. So it was an interesting mix, but it worked. So it was great just knowing that, diversity really is like the spice of life.
I agree. Yeah, so that's very important.
yeah, it was a great experience.
And you guys, how did you manage the work? Because you each had your own specialties, let's say. Did you give yourselves like bits of work accordingly to meet like everybody's expertise, or you just got what you got? Or?
Well, in the beginning, it was a bit challenging, but the good thing is that when you start off any project, the beginning involves a bit of research. So in the beginning, we didn't really know who to assign what, but we know that we all needed to do some research. And not having previous background on the project kind of leveled the playing field for all of us because we all didn't quite know where to start. So what we did was to say, okay, you know, these few things are mentioned, let's just all take apart and do some research. And then over time, you know, we realized that things just started to unfold naturally. And in the end, we all ended up building different components of the system that work together. So it was a bit interesting how it all unfolded. But in the beginning, it was difficult to know how to start, but also, you know, as I said, the playing field was level. So we all were starting at the same point, and we all know we needed to do some research. So that's really how we started.
Was it an added difficulty that this batch was solely online because of the coronavirus global pandemic? The program usually takes place in the campus, and
Yeah.
I think this year this is the second batch, I believe, that was done online. How did that work out? Because again, you don't know these people, you don't know where to start, you don't know the project or the challenge, and you are each, you know, you don't have that relaxed time or that free time to get to know each other and talk about anything. You're like, you know, we're here to work. How do you manage that?
It was a bit challenging in the beginning, I would say. The main challenge is that we were in two different time zones. So two of my team members were 6 hours ahead of me. And it was a challenge in the beginning just to figure out the dynamics, but it didn't really prevent us from getting work done. It's just a matter of figuring out when we will actually have a time to meet and talk and, you know, have some build up rapport. I would say the biggest disappointment was that I never got to visit Italy. So for me, you know, I love that it was remote. It presents great opportunities for people to work globally. The biggest disappointment was that I never got to visit the campus. I hear it's lovely though. So maybe someday.
I know.
But
I will make sure of it.
Thank you. Yeah, but it worked. The good thing is that when you're spread across different time zones, work can keep going. So even though there was a 6 hour difference between us, for the most part, there was probably just a small window where no one was working. So work kept going. And that was, I think, a good thing with having that time difference between us.
Yeah.
But it didn't really prevent us from getting anything actionable done. It's just that in the beginning, we had to figure out how to arrange our calendars so that we can still have that rapport.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that the times you did manage to meet were probably more productive and, you know, to the point than when, if you're there, you probably talk more, discuss more, and maybe you don't get to individually work on specific stuff. And here you can just use that time to bring it all together and you know, and decide next steps and how to focus.
Right. Yes, exactly. And what we did when we met every day. So it was like a stand-up call with, you know, like agile development where you have a daily stand-up and you talk about what you've worked on the day before, what you're currently doing. So we really made use of the time to ensure that we check in. It's good. We stayed focused. I think the difference when you're in person now, you would probably have that that banter where you interact more on a personal level. Yeah. But outside of that, yeah, we were able to stay focused, and we had our daily stand-up calls and we prepared. So we had our weekly meeting with our client or with the stakeholder, I would say, and we would always ensure that, okay, we need to be on the same page before we go into that meeting. So we had to always stay prepared. So it was good.
I was going to ask you next about this collaboration with the client. What's that about? Do they actually collaborate? Is it more, you know, you're here so far, yes, go ahead, stop here, or is it actual collaboration?
Oh yeah, it's actual collaboration. So in the beginning, you know, when you're just starting off, you're trying to learn about each other and how you can fit in. But our client or the stakeholder, he was very involved in what we're doing, and he was always willing to help. So the big part of our recommendation engine that we built was that it involved a human in the loop. And it was good to know that we had him as a resource to verify what we were doing and just ensure that we didn't miss the mark. So with our client, he has that a good mix, I would say, of technical and non-technical background. But in terms of the details of the machine learning approach, that aspect we discussed with him at a high level. So in our very first meeting, we created just a simple flow chart and say, this is how we're conceptualizing the problem and the system, this is how the system will be at a high level. In our first meeting, this is how we expect the system will operate. And that's what we used basically to convey or technique. And then from there, we were able to see what aspects of our flow chart was not the most intuitive based on a question. And after that, we were able to refine it to have a more simplified model that explained what we were trying to achieve. But yeah, generally what we would do is to explain our approach with flowcharts and then just produce some results. We always have something that we wanted to share with him to get his feedback, and then we will track his feedback in a document so that we will know if things are improving over time.
It seems like you found a very good way to communicate with the client, because this was another issue that I wanted to bring up with you. It seems like sometimes, you know, the technical jargon and the business talk, not just the fact that you're coming each from different angles, but the fact that communication can get in the way, you know. These people, you know, business people talk about ROI, about creating value. They used another language, and you guys are much more, you know, technically focused. So it seems like with your flowcharts and your system, you established a way of actually communicating effectively with the client and working towards that solution. And that to me seems one of the most relevant issues in this relationship as to how to get AI really to be accepted by the business community as, you know, offering real solutions to business problems. If technical people cannot express themselves in non-technical terms, and if business people are like, you know, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, there needs to be like a little bit of give and take from each side just to understand each other and build stuff going forward. So that it's very good that you managed to do that. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh no, I was saying, and the good thing about that as well is that it helped us to understand his needs more. So in the beginning, you know, we had a high level explanation as to what he was expecting, but the details were not there. And, you know, when you start any project, the project requirements are very rarely perfectly written. It's never 100%. And it's not on the part of the person who wrote it. It's just that sometimes it takes a bit of refinement just to get to the meat as to what the person is looking for. So when we used our flowchart approach, we were able to get his feedback, and over time we understood more as to what he was expecting, and it allowed us to improve our technique without having to, you know, teach him like how algorithms work and discuss the details of the machine learning approach. So yeah.
So another thing that gets in well, that doesn't see these type of projects sometimes come to like complete fruition is the fact that the implementation in business implementation of such technical solutions can be hard. do you already, in the project you worked on, did you already foresee this? Are there steps to make any implementations easier? Is it something that still needs to develop? How do you see that?
Not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes AI projects are taken on as like very independent sort of research projects, they're lab projects, and they might be very interesting and seem to be able to solve really big issues. But then once they translate into a business, you pass the ball on to the business to implement that solution. It gets stuck in the business side of it. So a lot of companies don't find a way, even with the solution in their hands, they don't find a way to structure themselves to implement those solutions. I don't know if it's something that you guys already have in mind, how to make this easier for them to, implement tomorrow when this is done, or if it's something that, needs to be thought about a bit more once the project is over.
Yeah, we made an effort to document everything that we did and also explain the reason we went about things a particular way. So we had two types of documentation. We had our documentation, which was more of like the project document, which spoke about the need and also the proposed solution, or the solution that we developed, I should say. And then we also had our code base, which also has its own documentation that a technical person should be able to take and deploy. So I would say that they appeal to two different people.
Yeah.
So the written documentation that we had would appeal more to the stakeholder and even his colleagues, whereas the code base would appeal more to the technical people on their staff, and it would help them to integrate it. In terms of deploying the overall solution, I think the biggest challenge is that when you're deploying these solutions, a lot of surprises happen. And I guess Murphy's Law takes effect. And you get a lot of surprises. And then at that point, when you try to integrate your system, especially if you're integrating it into another system, that's when you realize that things are just not fitting as seamlessly as you would hope. But we made an effort to modularize our system without being too technical. So the way how we did it was that we developed each system as small components, and you hoping that you can integrate each component at a time so that in theory, it should connect based on how we developed it. Or it should work independently. So it's something that you can actually just use independently without trying to integrate it into an existing solution. So yeah, the approach we took was to try to modularize the way how we developed our system, hoping that would help them to easily integrate it. But yeah, I think a lot of times when you move from the research to the technical implementation of these systems, a lot of unexpected things happen. And sometimes it just has to do with integrating new technology with legacy technology. And the surprises happen there, and then you spend a few weeks trying to iterate over how to make this work. And sometimes you just have to build a middle ground system that can actually just communicate between the two.
Absolutely. I think that's a smart way to go about it. And I think the modular, making these smaller modules for, bits and pieces that can be worked on and implemented, it's a very smart strategy to make sure that this happens inside the companies. Very, very good.
Thank you.
So overall, what would you say, after going through this, what is the most significant takeaway you take from this experience?
The most significant, I would say that it's an excellent learning opportunity. And the most significant takeaway, I would say, well, if I was to impart some sort of knowledge on the next batch of participants, I would say to just spend more time understanding the problem and the business need, and most importantly, the machine learning task. I would say that as a machine learning enthusiast, or however you want to phrase yourself, it's easy to just want to take some data and then build something fantastic and use the latest and greatest technology. But what's really required here is just to get an understanding about the problem and also the machine learning task. So this will help you to understand if a machine learning solution is useful, but more than likely it is useful, but it would help you to put things into perspective as to how it actually translates into the business goals. And when you spend some time understanding the task, that can really help to shape how you approach the solution and not try to find really the latest and greatest technique. You really want to find one that is actually meaningful and will answer the business goals, or actually answer the business questions, which should also tie into the business goals. So I would say to spend more time understanding the problem and also the machine learning task. And for my project, I would say the curveball was that we started and we didn't have any data, which was odd. And it's odd if you're coming from a Kaggle background, but in practice, a lot of times when you're starting these projects, you really don't have all the data prepared for you. It's very rarely like a perfect scenario. But over time, you realize how you can actually approach starting a problem in a meaningful way without any data, and then how to move from there. So that's why I would say it's very important to spend some time understanding the business goals and the machine learning task. And then from there, you find that the approach you take will be less painstaking, because you have a better understanding as to the client's goals and their expectations.
Very valuable learning, I think. When I hear that AI experts need to really understand the business problem, to me it's very promising that we move along these lines. Again, because the communication between the two parts needs to be, really good in order for one to be able to do for the other. Otherwise, we're still siloed and things don't happen. There's much hype about AI, and then when in truth, sometimes a lot of things don't happen because there's this issue: technical people not understanding the business complexities, and the other way around as well. So business people expecting that it's a genie in a bottle that you can just yay. So here you go. Oh, wonderful. So I'm glad to hear that. All right, I have a couple more questions for you. Basically, dealing with this past year we had, an awful year in a lot of ways. Really, the word disruption is kind of in vogue, but this year was a very disruptive year. It just, it tore through everything. But again, I think it also presented sort of a lot of opportunities to, looking forward, and especially in fields like AI. What are your thoughts on this? How do you foresee, for example, next year, the effect or the impact that AI can have in the current global situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I
It's
would
a big
say
question.
that,
Sorry.
I would say the very nature of AI is to disrupt. And depending on what side of the fence you're on, you will appreciate the disruption or not. But what I would say is that, as a machine learning practitioner, it's important for me to be mindful as to what type of disruption I participate in.
Okay.
So when I say the very nature of AI is to disrupt, is that it presents a new way for us to approach problem solving. So if you think about the healthcare field, we have an opportunity here where we can actually personalize medicine and how we actually treat people. And I think this is a great opportunity because, we're we're genetic. We're built up of genes, right? So what would apply for you would necessarily apply for me. And if we can treat people based on a more personal level, I think we would have a different outcome versus, the way how we have been doing it right across the board, right? So I think we have a great opportunity there. But I also am aware that with that type of potential, we also need regulations. And it's great to see the conversation happening here in terms of how you can actually use people's data and what you can actually give access to, because there was a time when companies thought that if they stored this data, it belonged to them, but in fact it's not their data. So I'm happy to see this discussion now in terms of what can be used to build your algorithm and what you cannot use and how much you can use it. But I also think that we have a great opportunity to use these technologies to improve people's quality of life, improve safety as well. When you even think about the automotive industry, I think at one point people were a bit hesitant about AI because there was so much in terms of automation that happened. So it's like AI is going to come and take away my job.
Yeah.
But if you think about the automotive industry and others, you see that AI is having some practical use now, where it's being built into vehicles, and if there's a potential collision, your vehicle can avoid that and stop safely. Now we're seeing the benefits of having internal GPS and even adding something as simple as a backup camera with a sense detector so that you can know if someone's behind you. So I think that the very nature of AI is to disrupt, but the way how you receive it will really determine, where you are on the side of the fence will determine how you receive it. But I think it's also important for us as people in general to remember that when we're using this AI and we're using data to train them, that, you may think it's just a row, but each row is a person. Each row in your data set really affects somebody's quality of life or their well-being. And as a practitioner, it's important to be mindful of what you build as much as you can, because sometimes we don't see the full picture. But be mindful of what you build and how it can affect people's life. But yeah, I think we're in a good place in terms of how we can use AI. I don't quite think we're at the place of killer robots that people are envisioning, but there are real things that are of concern, which I'm aware of. But also we have a great opportunity to use it to help people and improve their quality of life.
Yeah, I think these things that are more worrisome do require strict regulation, and
Exactly.
just everyone, the consciousness of the impact that your job, your work can have on people and society, on the planet right now, absolutely everything. So it is quite a responsibility, but I share your optimism. I also think it opens up a lot of possibilities and the chance for everything being better instead of scarier, which is sometimes seems to be like, the angle. Oh, so we'll lose our jobs. It'll be, fear. So I don't see it going that way. So, and I'm glad that you, since you're the expert and not me, you just reassured me that we are going to move in it. We can move, not that we're moving, that we can move in the right direction. We're happy to.
Well, the good thing is that AI paired with social media opens up the door so that some things that would have been done in the quiet, now everyone basically is equipped with their own recording device, or everyone has a voice now where they can talk about these things and people are listening. So I think that we are in a good place. There are still some aspects that need regulations in terms of what people are using, what people are building, different countries around the world, and how they intend to use it. But I think in general, we are in a good place now, especially with this era where we're we're talking about things openly and publicly, and we're forcing, you know, some of these organizations to respond. So there's now that accountability. So I do think that, you know, the future is looking bright, but it's also important for us as AI practitioners to be mindful of what we do.
Agree. Very good. And then one last thing, because as a woman,
Yeah.
and I'm not in the technical field, but I do think that there are clearly more men in this in the artificial intelligence, machine learning fields than there are women. I'm not sure if it has, if that means that it has been tougher for you or not, but in which way, how can you encourage more women to participate in this field? How can women become more comfortable in the space? Any words of encouragement that you can have moving forward?
Yeah, sure. It has been a challenge, I would say. Um, Oddly enough, though, or surprisingly enough, when I first started out in computer science, I had a good team, and my team mainly composed of men, but they were very supportive. And if I didn't have a team to encourage me along the way, it would have been much more challenging, because I think when I first started, there were probably about maybe 5 women in my entire class. And it would be 5 out of probably 40 or something like that. So when you think about the entire year of for the college groups, the college for the entire year that graduated that in 2002, I believe, or no, it wasn't 2002, but the entire graduating class, I would say it was probably less than 20 women in total in this whole space of AI and in technology in general. And I think it's a very daunting area for us, mainly because there isn't a lot of representation. And if you do have a question, you kind of feel like you should just wait until after class. You just go and ask the professor, or you ask your question in the quiet. But what I would say is that it's important to network, both with both men and women, but it's important to network. And over time, you realize that the same questions that you have, other people have it as well. It's just that they're more skilled at asking the questions before you. And then it's also confirmation to know that, you know, when someone asks a similar question, that you were not asking something trivial. You know, but it's a very challenging area to be in. But I think it's very important as women to network. And, you know, you can network a lot online these days, and even in data science communities, but just network and try to build a portfolio. I can guarantee that what we do is just as good, if not better. But I would just say, just to be level and fair, what we do is just as good. What we have to say is just as important. It's just that sometimes we think twice before we do or before we say, which has its benefits as well, to think twice before speaking and doing things.
Sure.
But I would say that for women in general, it's just important for us to network and just be a bit more confident. And it's a challenge, I would say. I'm still working on it personally, but it's important to network and start off with maybe 1 or 2 people who you're comfortable with, and over time just add more people to your network and communicate with them, and try to find a mentor, which I think is great. For me, finding a mentor who is approachable can really help to set you on the right track. And finding a mentor who's supportive is also good. So I think it's very important to find a mentor. And that was also one of the reasons that I was even attracted to PyCampus, was the mentoring aspect of it, because your mentor can really shape your outlook on this field, and they can point you in the right direction. So networking and find a mentor, and you know, it'll be a bit more comfortable.
I like it because you have approached the question as, you know, the challenges that women face and how to encourage them, but the actual advice you give works for everyone, you know. So this is, I like the fairness of the advice. Sophie, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and hear your thoughts about the school, the experience, the project, how you go about it, and your outlook, your optimistic outlook on the future of AI. I really do hope we get to meet in Rome one day. So we need to bring you over. We need to get done with this. So yeah, so hopefully we'll see each other soon. Thank you so much again for doing this, and best of luck with whatever you're working on right now, which I'm sure will be a success, and everything you do in the future. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
You too. Take
All the
care.
best with the program.
Thank you. Thanks, Sophine. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.